Welcome back to another Racer X Roundtable. I'm joined by Kellen Brauer, Mitch Kendra, and Jason Weigandt, and we are talking the Lawrences. And I know some of you are probably already beside yourself just hearing that, but we are nearing the end. This is the last of when we were going to see Jett and Hunter race head to head against each other in Supercross. We have this weekend in East Rutherford, and we might have another at Salt Lake, assuming that they both race. And I think that before we get into this conversation of who is better or who is going to win, I think we need to just take a minute to appreciate being able to see rival brothers in their prime race against each other, because we've never had that ever. Not just in motocross, but in sports in general. It's very rare. You have the Williams sisters in tennis. We saw a little bit of James on his way out and Malcolm on his way in, but this is very rare, and we should appreciate it for what it is. So, Mitch, I know you're our stat guy on this. What kind of stats can you tell us about Hunter and Jett coming in this weekend?
Yeah, so entering this weekend, Hunter coming off the win in Atlanta. That was his second Atlanta Supercross race win in a row. And last year's event, in 2022 was a Showdown. So that was his first career Showdown win. And obviously we know Jett won the 2021 finale in Salt Lake City. So they're entering this weekend, one Supercross East-West Showdown win each. And then Hunter's win in Atlanta was his 11th career win, and Jett has 12, so they're right there behind each other again. I know it's something we've been comparing the race wins in total. So again, kind of similar stats there between the two in terms of career wins, one Showdown win each.
And then Kellen, you follow the series better than probably anybody. They've had a pretty easy time of it. If you look at the stat line this year, it's just ones across the board, with each of them having a blemish. Do you think that there is a bit more on the line for each of them in a rivalry sense coming into these two showdowns that might not have been there before?
I personally don't think so. I think that they both look at it as they each have their goals of accomplishing the title this year. And for Jett, he's probably even already starting to transition his focus a little bit into moving to a 450 for outdoors, whereas Hunter is trying to win this 250 outdoor title coming up. And so I think they both have their focuses almost split in a little bit different areas, and it's not so much focusing on each other and beating each other this weekend. But I do think that there is still that friendly rivalry that they have, just being brothers and obviously growing up riding and racing each other the way that they have, that this is going to be a bit of a bragging rights situation. If they're actually racing out front against each other, it might just wick it up that little extra bit to be like, oh, I got to beat him. I got to get him this time so I can take it back to the test track this week.
And that's a good point. So you did a video on Monday about how Hunter can actually clinch the title this weekend. He doesn't need that much help to get it done, where Jett, although he also has a very big points lead, it is not nearly as out of the thought. Weege, does that give an advantage to Hunter that he literally doesn't? He could miss an entire race, he could DNF, and he still has a massive points lead.
Well, yes and no, but this could come down to a few points this weekend, deciding if he wraps it up now or later, right? So there's almost an incentive to try to scratch, depending on how it turns out, for an extra point or two, if that's the difference between clinching or not. But we got a little insight into how the brothers work at the last race of the year in Pro Motocross last season at Pala, when Jett was super mad that he wasn't told what position Hunter was in to try to help Hunter get second in the championship, which led to this bizarre deal of a rider winning a moto and being super pissed that he didn't pull over and let somebody go by him. So, yeah, the numbers say that this should be like the ultimate showdown. First of all, forget brothers. How often do we have East and West where each rider has won all but one race? We've had a couple of rivalries in the past where someone was dominant on each coast at the same time, but this is pretty rare air. Then you throw the brother thing on top of it, and it seemed like it'd be straight fire. But I think we know the Lawrences don't play that way anymore. I mean, Jett was willing to lose a race last summer if it helped Hunter get second in the series, and a big bonus that we presume he had in his contract with Honda. So I think kind of the point we've already made. I think both of them are going to, if it works out and they start together, sure, they want to win the race. But unfortunately for all of us, I think they're both thinking big picture and don't blow our championships trying to beat each other, as opposed to this is the ultimate showdown, one-on-one, and whoever finishes second to the other is a loser. Unfortunately, I don't think they're looking at it that way.
Yeah, here, if I'll chime in for a second. So just talking with the guys after the races, Jett said a couple weeks ago about the Showdown. He said they want to be P1 and P2. He didn't clarify which in that order, but they both want to be up front. And then talking with Hunter over the weekend, he said in the press conference, his quote was, "We both know if we're stupid enough to jeopardize our own championship hopes, we know what's coming to us straight from the admin." And by the admin, we assume he means their dad, Darren, Dazzy as they call him. Again, like we said, there's probably going to be, if it's, hey, 1 or 2 points positions, his mechanic's going to give them a message, get 1 or 2 more to get the title. But they're not going to take each other out just because the bragging rights. So that's, again, something we've kind of interacted with them, heard straight from them. So
don't feel bad, everybody. This will be the last time that they're in separate championships. You will someday, we saw them battle quite a bit outdoors last year. There were some epic motos. And we presume in the future, maybe we'll have this position in the 450 class where they're not racing for 2 separate titles, but for 1, and not for race wins that don't really matter against each other, but for 1 race win that does. So we don't want to put a blanket on the fire, but it's just the way East-West this season happened to have broken down for them. Maybe someday, I mean, can you imagine if we had a 450 championship that came down to the brothers? That would then force a different scenario.
Yeah, and not just that, but brothers that are also riding for the same team. Like, I think it's something that's somehow been lost because everybody talks, Pro Circuit's been such a big program, and then Star has been the program in the last couple of years. But like this Honda squad with the Lawrence brothers, they just have to be ecstatic. Like, it's weird to not even think about it. They're red bikes with red plates, and it's been that way literally all year. And how much does this mean, rivalry aside, just for that brand and for the family, and then for Lucas Myrtle? Like, it's just the whole stock is rising for both of those guys, and they're bringing kind of the whole sport with it.
Yeah, well, I think that's another thing.
Yep.
I was going to say, I think that's another thing to consider is that because they are on the same brand, neither title being wrapped up yet going into this weekend, I think that they not necessarily will be told, hey, let's take it easy, but maybe is sort of like the unspoken rule of like, this is not the time to try to kill each other for the win. Maybe let's wrap up a title and then let you guys play fair and square at the finale, which is very possible that they get both done before we even get to Salt Lake City. And then maybe at that point we see a real straight up race. So it does feel like this weekend will be a little bit more subdued because of the championship picture. And I think Honda will maybe come in and say like, hey, let's not push each other here too much. But if they start up front, they're also the Lawrence brothers at the end of the day. They still get a little bit feisty and fired up from time to time.
It's funny. As soon as we did one of these roundtable videos, because as soon as we saw Hayden Deegan and Jordan Smith in a heat race, everyone's antenna immediately was up saying, whoa, they're teammates. This is weird. So yes, we're somewhat losing sight of the fact that we don't normally see teammates try to murder each other out on the track. But the brother versus brother, and that they've each won so many races this year, is kind of clouding the idea of, yeah, they're teammates, and you do not normally see teammates do anything but die to try to beat each other.
And another note about them being on the same team too, factory HRC Honda didn't have a 250 team for, I don't know exact years off the top of my head, but the last 15, 20-ish years, it was always the Geico Connection, factory connection team. So what the win over Atlanta last weekend was Sexton and Hunter. They did that at Detroit. So this season they have 2, sweeps of both main events, which again, they didn't have for years just because they literally didn't have a 250 factory squad. So bringing the Lawrences back on board has probably been a boost for the factory team, just in general. Between the race wins, titles, they're literally battling each other. That's probably brought a lot of storylines back that we might not even have seen.
Should we bring up the ultimate hypothetical that if both brothers clinch early and somehow Chase Sexton's still alive for the title? I don't know. What does Honda do?
Hey, we asked at the Pro Motocross finale last year at Pala, we had both Lawrence brothers on our Friday night preview show. And we did ask Jett, who just barely, it was close, wasn't it, Mitch? He almost wrapped the 250 title up early last summer, didn't he? It was close.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we said, if you had, and you had to be thinking about it because it was in play, would you have moved up? And he just, typical unfiltered Jett Lawrence, said, yeah, I would have come up and I would have did everything I could to help Changers. And then we said,
Changers.
Well, first of all, who's Changers? Changers apparently is Chase. And he said I would try to hole shot and let Chase by and then block Eli with all I could. And I was like, wow, okay, you're just saying it. You're just saying it right now.
Yeah, like you said, they're pretty unfiltered. And even Hunter after the race over this past weekend, whenever he had that close call with his crotch and the handlebars and everything, he's like, I'm a little bit sore in that area. And, they're just wild. Everything they say is just kind of, you never know what to expect. And,
All right,
The
so
nicknames, too, like you mentioned.
obviously the ultimate question before we wrap it up is who do you got? Kellen, let's start with you.
I'll pick Jett because I feel that Hunter, more so than Jett, will maybe be in championship mode this weekend. I think Jett may help Hunter win the race if that's the case. But I also could see a scenario where Jett just gets out front and Hunter sees the points playing out as they are and either rides to a second or something like that and doesn't force the issue to try to catch his brother.
Weege?
I want to give a mention that obviously there's a whole nother field of riders out here, and historically these showdowns oddly end up getting won a lot by not a champion or a guy that's not in the championship lead. So last year we were hyping up Christian Craig and Jett as the 2 points leaders going into the showdown in Atlanta, and then Hunter, who was not the points leader either class, won. And the finale showdown, or shootout as they called it back in the day, was won by non-champions all the time. So I don't want to make it sound like we're disrespecting other riders that could win. But I think we just have to acknowledge that the Lawrence brothers have been a level above all the riders in their coast all year. So the idea that both of them would screw up on the same night, they would both get bad starts, they would both crash, they would both ride horrible, seems a little far-fetched. So we're not disrespecting the other guys. And I know history says some random's going to win. Can you guys imagine if Deegan wins? Can you imagine?
Oh, building would burn down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, beats both of the red plates in the same race.
Yeah, exactly. And let's not forget, both coasts have been kind of hurt by injuries. We won't have Cameron McAdoo in action right now. We did get Joe Shimoda back.
Finale.
What's that?
Nate Thrasher, who won the finale showdown, as we mentioned, he's out with
Nate Thrasher might have been the guy the underdog to pick for this one, right?
Yeah.
So no disrespect to the rest of the field. Yeah, we lost a couple. Shimoda's maybe not quite back yet. Like he's going to be on track. So yeah, I don't want to disrespect the other riders. I just feel like the odds that both Lawrences are going to screw up on the same night are pretty large. So I'm not going to bet on that happening. So yeah, I got to pick one or the other, and I'll just go with Jett. What the heck?
I agree with you, Weege, because I was gonna swerve and go last and say the field because yeah, odds are it's probably going to be somebody else. Just statistically, it's probably going to be somebody else. But in all fairness, because we are doing the, which one is it going to be? I'm going to go Hunter because of the consistency. Just looking at all of the stats, and I think this has been talked about, Jett he's had a more fantastical moments and charges from behind and whatever, but Hunter it's looked very effortless. Mitch, you're last up. Where are you?
I'm a little brother, so I usually would say little brother here, but I think we're going to go with Hunter because, again, if, not saying he's going to win the whole thing, maybe somebody else does, but between these two guys, I feel like Hunter is going to finish higher because I just think it'd be cool to have their stats would match up again. He would have one more overall showdown win, but the stats would be right there. And kind of like you mentioned, he's been more consistent a little bit, I would say. He had that late race charge against Nate Thrasher in Tampa. Obviously, Thrasher will be out this weekend, but I feel like he's just going to get that done and just kind of it'll be a good, proud moment for him just to be able to say, hey, I beat Jett. He's leaving the class, but I got the win. So, and then like you mentioned, if they both race the finale, and maybe something happens there again. I don't know. We'll see.
All right, we'll leave the bench racing to the rest of you guys, and then we just have to wait and see what actually plays out on Saturday. So Kellen, Mitch, Weege, thanks for joining me for another RacerX Roundtable. Be sure to visit RacerX online for all of your motocross and supercross news.